welcome back into another episode of The Pit. I think this is episode 23. We are rocking and rolling right now. Dog Days of Summer. I'm Drew Pavon here in Columbus, Georgia at WTVM. And I'm joined today by Ryan Kelly, the man, the myth, the legend down in Tallahassee, Florida, little South Georgia, WCTV sports director. Ryan, we're going to start with Braves recap of the week. A lot better of a week, I'd say. I don't know, something about that calendar flipping in July. The bats kind of woke up in the middle of the week, especially those first two games of the Mets series. Your thoughts on this past week with the Braves?
Well, my thought is thank God that the Mets were on the schedule. Let's just start there. But listen, this is a team that we've talked about all year long. There's no real reason to rehash it. They've played above the sum of their parts at times. The offense, the bats have come around. This is baseball. There's 162 games. You're going to slump. It's going to look not so pretty at times. But at the end of the day, you're heading into the All-Star break. You're heading into a series against the Buccos now, still with around a 3-game lead over the Philadelphia Phillies. So you've kind of stayed pat. You've stopped the bleeding for now. If you can just kind of continually hold serve until the break, rest up, get ready to go, get ready for the home stretch of this season, I think Atlanta's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and the Braves will finish up their series with the Mets tonight, try to go for the series win. They're up 2-1. Game 1 hit 4 home runs. Game 2 hit 5 home runs. Game 3, Sunday night, or Sunday evening, I guess, I thought they were going to pull off that comeback. I mean, they lose 10-9. They were down 10-3 going into the bottom of the ninth. They get one run. Drake Baldwin, bases loaded, grand slam. They get another runner on second and third, 2 outs. Dom Smith, all he's got to do against Devin Williams, get this ball in play. They just fall short. It felt like they were going to rally in that game. Just felt like both those teams were like, all right, who's going to win? Are you guys going to take it, or are we going to take it? Like, how are we going to piece this thing out? Close game, but they're going to go for the series win. Hopefully not split with the Mets. Like I said, they got to play the Buccos this week, Tuesday, another Braves on gray game, but 9 homers in the first 2 games. I think the right progression for the lineup, at least. We've kind of seen that, they struggled at times this year. Maybe it's Ha-Seong Kim just getting called down to the getting to the IL, and then Jim Jarvis starting at shortstop. That's got to be it. I feel like you just get that guy out of your lineup. But do you think this was the right step for the lineup, moving out of a game like this for the Mets to kind of give them some juice a couple weeks out from the All-Star break?
Oh, for sure. And then, of course, you've called up Murphy, the top prospect as well. You're getting fresh pieces onto this roster. I'm taking a look at it. Yeah, I mean, you just had to send Kim down. I mean, it was time. It was what you had to do. Jarvis has looked well. He's looked solid. I think things are going to be fine. But yeah, getting this game tonight against the Mets could be a big, big deal. Like you said, you don't want to split here, especially against a team that's struggling. Boy, if you just could have pulled that comeback off. Because just looking at the complete schadenfreude of it, not even as a Braves fan, but just as someone who thinks it's funny when big salary teams end up struggling. The Mets are out of people to blame. If you would have blown that game, oh my goodness, what on earth would have happened in the New York media had the Mets blown that and lost that series and now are staring a sweep in the face? But of course, that being what it is, again, just solid stuff from Atlanta. You're starting to figure it out. The power is starting to come back. And guys are starting to step back up again. So yeah, I'm not too worried about the Braves. They did what they needed to do this week. They kind of hit the pause button, told everybody take a deep breath. Things still aren't perfect, but again, if you can just get through this final week unscathed, get into the break, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Owen Murphy. Him getting the call Monday morning. A guy that started opening day in Double-A Columbus here 3 months ago and broke the Clinkstones strikeout record in his first game and first appearance in Double-A. Kid's really impressive. Great mix-up. Obviously was in Gwinnett. I think the reading from Mark Bowman early on this, or at least today, was expect Richie and Murphy to be coming out of the bullpen. A lot of people are concerned with this rotation, but I think they just have so much depth and talent. I think they're kind of, I don't want to say pulling back on their younger arms like Richie and Fuentes and Murphy by using them in the bullpen, be middle relief guys. But, Fuentes has done great being that, 2-3 inning guy in certain spots in games where he could step up. The rotation at times, it's been questionable. Obviously Grant Holmes and Elder have struggled. Smith Shawver, really impressive the past week in Augusta. I think had a sub-2 ERA, multiple strikeouts, touched 100 on the gun on Sunday. I think in 4 innings and 5 strikeouts. So really impressive to see that. But I think with the depth they have, and people are like, Atlanta needs a starting pitcher. I think they have the depth there that they can make it work. I think they have the pieces enough in the rotation with their younger arms that they could ship these guys out. Maybe that's part of it. It's like get these guys to the majors and they're young. You look at a Richie or a Fuentes or a Murphy, like, hey, Detroit, we got legit arms that, we could be willing to shell out for Tarek Skubal. Do you think the rotation is a serious point of emphasis for the Braves going into the trade deadline in the end of the month?
I think you hit the nail right on the head that there's absolutely two ways you can go about it. You're showing that this farm system is deep. Everybody knows the farm system that Anthopoulos has built has so many good pieces. They've had so many guys bouncing around in the minors now. And now that you're starting to bring them up, you're starting to see what they can do at this level. Yeah, there's two ways you can absolutely go about this. You can win by committee a little bit more with the back end of the staff. You can let these guys kind of grow and mature into these arms, or if somebody likes what they sees, like a Tigers, like somebody else, get them on the phone and say, hey, you may or may not have a superstar arm that we would absolutely love to have. You want some prospects. So yeah, there's a couple different ways that you can go about this if you're Atlanta. And that's, of course, the benefit of drafting well. It's the benefit of having a good farm system. It gives you options, whether you want to use this homegrown talent yourself or you want to ship it out somewhere else for some guaranteed star power, especially when you're contending in a year where we talked about it all leading up. We weren't sure if this was a year where Atlanta was going to contend. And now here they are, still leading the NL East a week before the break.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to be buyers at this point of the season. It's just depending on, Alex Anthopoulos, how much he's willing to buy. That's always, Braves are always rumored in conversations, but comparatively to the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Blue Jays of the past couple of years, they haven't been willing to buy as aggressively as some other teams. Now, I think with them leading the division and how good the Phillies have been playing and the talent they have, you got to be aggressive. Now, I want to bring up the All-Star game. Rosters were released on Saturday just before the Mets game. Braves have 5, tied for most in Major League Baseball. 2 starters, Drake Baldwin and Ozzie Albies, catcher and second base. Chris Sale also on the roster. Matt Olson's going to be the backup behind Freddie Freeman. And Raisel Iglesias. Are you shocked, Ryan, that Michael Harris isn't on this All-Star roster?
100%. And I get it. It's an embarrassment of riches. You, like you said, already 5 All-Stars. You've got so many great dudes on this roster. Of course, Chris Sale doing what he's done at his age. Raisel Iglesias, of course, has been such a phenomenal closer since he's been acquired by the Angels. What was it now, 4 or 5 seasons ago? It's hard to believe it's been that long. But Baldwin, we knew that he could emerge into a star. Ozzie and Matt have continued to be consistent pieces, but Harris has been so good in the outfield. He's on pace to hit 30 home runs. He's one of the few guys in the majors hitting over 300. It just feels like, and I get it, there's a lot of good outfielders in the National League, but it just feels like a guy that should have been a no-brainer. It's tough to be in a situation where you've already got 5 All-Stars and you're arguing for one more. It kind of falls on deaf ears. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Take your ball and go home. But again, Harris has absolutely deserved to be in that All-Star roster. I still hope that he finds a way to make it there. But it just feels like that. And honestly, your thoughts on this as well, I feel like you could have put one of the bigger bullpen arms in that conversation as well. I get bullpen arms aren't something that happens a lot in the All-Star game, or at least there's not a lot of roster spots for a bullpen arm. But we just talked about this pitching staff and how they've kind of been, the sum of the parts has been more than a whole at times, and the bullpen has been a big piece of that.
Yeah, Dylan Lee is a name that immediately comes to mind. I was kind of shocked that Iglesias got the nod over Dylan Lee. But I feel like with All-Star games, and you brought it up, like being a middle reliever and like a setup man to make the All-Star game is very tough to do. Like you got to be throwing a sub-1 ERA and you got to have like at least maybe 10 saves in between there to really make it. Like I think about the Yankees like a decade and a half ago when they had Rafael Soriano and Mariano Rivera. Like they just had legit arms in the bullpen. Like Iglesias making it, I popped up. I was like, Iglesias has been great. But like Dylan Lee has been a name that's kind of just flown so low under the radar that I guess maybe didn't grab the attention of the national voters as much as people would have assumed. Chris Sale obviously getting it, a veteran who's continued to be great for the Braves when he's healthy. But Iglesias, it's a weird spot. All-Star game's always so different when it comes to the voting process because, part of it is the fan vote. and I do believe Matt Olson won the outside vote from the writers or whoever it was, but Freddie Freeman won the fan vote to make him a starter. That's got to sting a little bit for some Braves fans out there somewhere. But Ozzie Abel,
Braves fans never talk about Freddie Freeman. That never happens. It never happens. They never talk about Freddie ever.
No, right? Did he ever play for the Braves?
Yeah, it never happened. It never happened.
No, everyone forgets that. It's funny because I saw the video on social media on Sunday of like his first return. Someone made like an edit out of it, but like his return to the Braves and like he was just crying, getting his ring. And I'm like, God, it's so tough what happened to him. And then he fired his agent, and he was like, this guy just screwed me out of staying a Brave my entire career. Matt Olson's been great. Like, don't get me wrong. Being a Yankee fan, I can't like Freddie Freeman after game one at that grand slam of that World Series. That's all.
I was to say, it's been so awful for Freddie Freeman. He's made so many millions of dollars, and he got 2 more World Series rings. What a tough break for the old Bravos first baseman. How tough it's been since he left Atlanta.
Oh, I got to sign a 1-day deal at the end of my career to be a Brave to go into the Hall of Fame.
Got to get the right cap on the bus, right?
Yeah, right. So All-Star game, obviously in Philadelphia. Not sure who's going to be in the home run derby. I do believe, was it Olsen or Acuna that did it last year in Atlanta? I can't remember off the top of my head.
That is a great question. I believe it was Olsen. Let me check that out for you.
Now the question is,
always great television when you're Googling to make sure.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, we want to be fact checked here, right?
For sure. Why not?
They switched the rules of the home run derby. I believe there's no more timing. I think it's just the pitches. And I feel like the derby rules changed so much over the years. If you're a Braves fan and you're seeing Matt Olson sit there, I have an opinion on this. I want to hear your thoughts on it, Ryan. Do you want him to hit in the home run derby?
Listen, at the end of the day, yeah, it's the Derby. I want to see my guys hit. I don't think somebody's getting hurt. I don't think so. Just swing, have fun. That's what All-Star Week's about. I hate when we tried to make All-Star Week something outside of that. Of well, what about this? What about that? Just swing away, have fun. Speaking of last year, it was Matt Olson. He finished next to last with 15 home runs. Can you tell me who finished last place in last year's home run derby? How many home runs did he hit?
2.
Well, you sold your boy Jazz a little short. It was 3.
It was 3. It was either 2 or 3. Some part of me was like, I think he had 1 with like 50 seconds left or something like that. And Jazz, look, he's fun to watch, but I mean, there's something, and I don't know why, but maybe this is just like my grandfather, being an old baseball player, purist, was just like, why these guys shouldn't play in the Derby. I think it was Robinson Cano back in like 2013 or 2012. I think he won the Derby, and then like he was second in the MLB in home runs, and then just like tailed off. And I was just raised on the thought that the home run derby messes up your swing. Like that, you just can't shake that mentality. And Ben Rice, our first baseman, who should have been the starter over Vlad Guerrero Jr., having a much better season than Vladdy. I think he's got double or triple the amount of home runs Vlad Jr. has, is talking about entering the Derby. And I'm not a fan of it because I think it messes up his swing, especially a guy like Ben Rice. And I know I'm getting way off topic here, but Ben Rice is a lefty pull.
Go for it.
Like a lefty pull hitter, and he'd win in Philly. He would win in Philly, but I just don't love it.
So as of right now, there's only one player declared for the draft. That's Junior Caminero, who came in second last year, if you'll remember, from the Rays. My goodness, what a tear he's been on these last couple weeks. Obviously, we're kind of in that Braves-Rays cross-section, but man, he can swing it. And when he's gotten one, it goes. It goes.
Yeah, no, and he's one of those guys I feel like the Rays have every couple of years where like they just like they got one dude who's a superstar, and with Kevin Cash as your manager, you're just playing small ball the rest of the way. Like, and you got good pitching.
As I say, just get on base, let those couple power sluggers do some damage.
Yeah.
Make sure that home run's not a solo shot. Yeah, I mean, that's the way the Rays play ball. It's all about those analytics.
Yeah, just get Chandler Simpson on base every single time with a drag bunt, and you'll be all right. All right. That's enough baseball talk. A lot happened in the past week in regards to NBA offseason. Hawks were a little quiet. Summer League gets kicked off, but we got to talk about the big headlines going across the association this past week. All coming up next on The Pit. Welcome back into the pit. We just got done talking Braves. James Irwin down at WLB Albany joining us now for some NBA offseason talk. We'll start with the Hawks. A slow week, I guess, for the first week of free agency. Didn't really make any signings. They did make one trade, Devin Carter acquiring him, and then they did decline Jonathan Kuminga's team options. James, I'll start with you. Do you think the Hawks' lack of aggressiveness is an issue, or do you think they were content with what they did in the draft?
I think they probably liked what they did in the draft, but yeah, I would have an issue about the lack of aggressiveness, and especially just how aggressive the East has been in NBA free agency. Giannis is staying in the East. He's going to Miami, so the Heat just got a lot better. Jaylen Brown staying in the East. He's going to Philadelphia. The Celtics still have a great roster despite losing Jaylen Brown. So I think, yeah, if you're a Hawks fan, you got to be a little bit upset about the lack of aggressiveness considering how much better you think the East has gotten compared to all these other moves. And declining Jonathan Kuminga's team option, who was kind of a key piece for us that on that run that they kind of made. In fact, they looked so good against the Knicks. They played the Knicks the best out of anyone in that NBA playoff run. So yeah, I think Jonathan Kuminga declining that team option. I don't necessarily, not the biggest fan of the move considering how big of a piece he was for the Atlanta Hawks. But yeah, I think you got to be like a little bit concerned about the lack of aggressiveness for the Hawks in free agency. Maybe they got some big trade cooking up. I doubt it. But yeah, if I was a fan, I would be concerned about the lack of aggressiveness from Atlanta, just considering how the season ended, how hot that team was, where that team was. And so, yeah, I think I would be concerned about the lack of aggressiveness.
Yeah, one position that was really circled in free agency that many thought for the Hawks was you'd acquire a backup center. Now you take Zuby Ejiofor, who is a lower, smaller size power forward center, and then you get Vesar in the second round, which is considered a steal as a backup center. Ryan, do you think that kind of played into the free agency approach? Was like they were happy with what they got out of the draft?
100% I do, and I'll take the other side on this. For you guys, I mean, no matter what the Hawks did, do we really think that next year the Hawks were going to be a title contender? And I get you never say never in professional sports. Not a lot of folks probably thought that the Knicks were coming home with Larry O'Brien at the end of the season, despite the fact that they had a lot of key pieces. They weren't exactly the favorite coming out of the East. I think the Hawks are kind of slow and steady wins the race here, like you said, Drew, and like we were talking a little bit about off air before we joined this show. That says that you really like what you got in the back end of this draft. You basically got two guys that you feel can be cloggers in the middle for you, including one at a very, very high value in the 50s. You end up with a squad that has already been playing well, has already been playing smart, has some great young pieces. You were able to get some of your key guys to stick around. I get it. The team option for Kuminga is a tough one. It's not exactly a thing you want to see happen, but I think this is a slow and steady wins the race for Atlanta. I think this isn't a next season game. This is a 3 seasons from now, 5 seasons from now game, and they feel if they can develop either of those two guys that they ended up picking to be in the middle and to being a star, whether it be Ejiofor, whether it be Vesar, or whether it be both of them, whether you end up moving one of them more to the 4. We talked about it so much last week about how much we like Flemings as a guard, as somebody who goes back and forth, as somebody who's going to play every foot of the court. I think this is more hey, let's develop these young guys. Let's not go all in because God forbid all these guys are stars and we don't have the money to sign them, or we're going to have to go dip into the luxury tax, or we're going to have to do some fancy accounting in 2-3 years when we really feel like we can make a run at these things when some of our young stars mature. So yeah, I don't have a problem with the way that they're going at it. I think slow and steady is going to win the race for Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. And they are a young team, and I think we saw them. So they were very impressive in that second half, and the pieces they acquired, and it got them that first round of the playoffs without having to go into the play-in tournament, and obviously that plays into it. You had such a successful year with Quinn Snyder and what they were able to do, dump it off what they did. You bring back CJ McCollum, you acquire a Kingston Flemings who could be the future, and they have enough pieces that improved last year to build off going into this season. But you look at this roster, it's not going to compete for a top 4 seed. You just hate to break it to you. Like the Knicks, you look at the Heat, you look at the Celtics, you look at the Sixers, like with the other acquisitions that were made this offseason, and the Raptors as well. Like you're probably going to be a 6 seed and back in that play-in. Let's be honest here, unless these teams have drastic injuries and you guys just play out of your minds. That's just how it's going to be. But if you can develop with these young stars and maybe Jalen Johnson turns into a top 15 player going into the following season and maybe develops in, he's a all-star game and, he's an all-pro. It really depends on that. But we talk about the other teams in the East, and the East has been very aggressive this year. And maybe that was because of what the Knicks had, because of the model has kind of changed. Just going off the list, Kawhi back to the Six in Toronto. Big trade there. The Jaylen Brown trade to Philly. LeBron's still a free agent, and we saw that. I'm sure you guys saw that list of that whiteboard that his agent had with like 10 teams and what each reason was for why these teams are in contention. James, I'll start with you. Out of the 3 listed on this graphic, which one was the most surprising to you?
I think it's got to be the Jaylen Brown being sent to Philly. I mean, I know there was like kind of rumblings and rumors about Jaylen Brown and trouble in paradise in Boston. And, with the whole Jason Tatum situation, whose team really was it? I didn't ever expect Jaylen Brown to actually be moved in a trade like this. I thought he would have left in free agency just because of what Boston had there. They did bring home a title. You felt like that was a really good core to have. But Jaylen Brown being sent to Philly, especially in the East, is what was so shocking to me. I thought Boston was going to send him out west. I thought maybe the Lakers could have made a move there, or some of those other West Coast teams trying to compete. But Jaylen Brown going to Philly, I mean, they joined Joel Embiid, VJ Epcom, Tyrese Maxey. I mean, that Philadelphia team is loaded to me right now. And honestly, going into the season, Philly might be my favorite to win the East. Just if you look at that roster on paper, obviously we got to see how all these guys play and they got to get their chemistry and we see how they gel. We saw that Brooklyn Nets experiment with 3 All-Stars pros with KD and Kyrie and James Harden. That just didn't work. So there's a very good possibility that this roster for Philadelphia just doesn't work and these guys just don't gel. But you look at that roster on paper, I think they're the favorite to win the East, and that's why it was so shocking to me for Boston to send Jaylen Brown to another team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, absolutely. A team, especially in their division, that they consider a rival, and what they got in return was Paul George and a couple picks, which is still going to make no sense.
And that was the other part, too, but getting Paul George?
Yeah, I mean, an aging veteran, like, what does he add to your team? And I got to say this, Brad Stevens won Executive of the Year a couple months ago. Is there any way we could get that trophy back? Like that, that's where I'm sitting at this point. Ryan, what's the biggest thing that has stuck out to you so far in free agency in the offseason?
I'll devil's advocate really quick as far as Jaylen Brown and as far as Brad Stevens. If that's what you're willing to get and that's the return you're willing to have for a guy that we all know is that something's up beyond what we know. Something's up with attitude. Something's up with culture. Something's up with that. If that's all it took to get Jaylen Brown out of the building, that says to me that in some way, shape, or form, they wanted Jaylen Brown out of the building. And I know there's been some reporting to some things about his attitude, but when you look at that, Stevens has done enough with the Celtics. Of course, he's won a championship as the executive there in Boston, to where I feel like that's a guy who gets the benefit of the doubt. It's one of those things that gets built up over time to where, hey, if there's an issue eventually, then it gets brought up. Isa and you, Pat Riley in Miami before, of course, bringing the Greek Freak down to South Beach after they've stayed pat for what feels like about the last 5 or 6 years. Kawhi Leonard, to me, it's less about the fact that he's back in Toronto and he's back where he won an NBA championship. It's more about how sad and how brutal it is that the Clippers window kind of feels like it closed in that era, right? I mean, there's nothing as brutal as when there's a fun team to watch, an interesting team to watch, and they just can't get over the hump, which, going back to us about Jaylen Brown in Philadelphia, good on the Sixers for swinging for the fences too, because they're very much in danger of being the next version of that team if they didn't do something big. Let's see if things work out with Brown. But yeah, Philly's just kind of been one of those teams that just kind of feels like they're there. They're talented enough, but deep down in your gut, they are what they are until they aren't. I love to say that about teams in sports. They kind of feel like they're parked in neutral. This is their identity. The identity is that they're a second-round team, and that's what they've been for forever, and that's what they will be until they get it done. Brown could be the piece to do that. Who knows what happens with Kawhi and the Raptors, but, it feels like that era for the Clips is done. And quite honestly, as somebody who likes to see the LA underdogs succeed, that kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah. All right, guys, we got a minute or two left here. Quickly, where's LeBron going, James? I'll start with you.
Man, to me, I think the best fit for LeBron, I think he's having a homecoming. I think he's going back to Cleveland. There's no better way, no better chapter to close it out than one final Cleveland run. Cleveland's right there. They have such a talented roster in the East as well. I think you add LeBron, you get some leadership. I think it's the perfect place to close the chapter.
He goes to Cleveland. I mean, that's another powerhouse team in the East, and the Hawks are basically in that play-in tournament. Ryan, where's Bron going?
Used to be in there anyway.
I think at this point, I'm with you guys. It's trending towards Cleveland. I've actually got a couple of folks in the know in Ohio who seem to think the same way, that things are trending in that direction. So, yeah, I think LeBron is a guy that's all about optics and all about the brand and the legacy. And going back to Cleveland, doing it with a team that we already know is very, very good. It could potentially be the piece to get them over the hump. Yeah, he'd love to do that. He'd love to be talked about in that way because the narrative has always been important to him. I think closing it out as the Akron Hammer back home in Cleveland would be the exact storybook type ending that he would want.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It would be storybook. We hear a lot of smoke about the Warriors or the Heat or the Sixers kind of coming to that conversation like LeBron would slide perfectly into that lineup, but the Cavaliers have set themselves up so perfectly to get LeBron. It feels like over the past 12 months, that's been the narrative, was like, all right, if he's not staying in LA, it's got to be Cleveland, right? So obviously LeBron sweepstakes continue. Hopefully he doesn't sign at the time after we're recording this, and then he's somewhere else. Right. But that's something that we can talk about coming up in a couple of weeks. But hey, that's all the time we got for the Pit. Thanks for joining us for your Georgia Regional Sports Show.